And this is the Windows Phone Lightning Design Reviews. We're going to take a look at some apps that designers and developers have submitted and talk about the Windows Phone design language and general design and usability and how we might improve some of these apps. So let's dive right into it. First app that we're going to look at is called Walk and Buy. You'll have to forgive me because this app is not in English, so I'm going to do my best at determining what's going on each screen. But the gist behind this app is that it'll help you to do some shopping, in particular stores that are popular and stores that are near you. So it opens up with a panorama. And the first section that you see is just categories. And so you can see there's restaurants and clothes and whatnot. I think this app is doing a really nice job of presenting what's, probably the key user scenario right up front. What type of shopping do you want to do? And then also some just quick icons to things like favorites or whatnot down below. Preferences and things are kind of out of the way. So these tiles are, they're easy to identify. Sometimes you see icons that are very highly detailed, so detailed that it's kind of hard to tell what's going on in the icon or identify what it is. It can get kind of pixelated on the screen, but these are very simple, very clean and straightforward. Only suggestion for this screen was just going to be that the title is a little hard to read, and I think it's just that the white text on the very light gray background with the shadow is just not high contrast enough. So you might want to play around with the colors that you're using there. Maybe try it without the drop shadow on it or with the drop shadow, but a different color, just to make that title, particularly the subtitle, I think it says the best around, make that easier to look to read. So dive into some of the sections. This is a listing of various shops and some information about them. There's a rating, so you can kind of see what the most popular shops are. So I think this app's doing a really nice job of presenting this information really cleanly. Including the logos, so you can the store logos, so you can very easily identify the stores, and then also what is probably pretty important is just the ratings and reviews there. I might suggest a little bit more space between the items. If you look at each one of the ratings and then the title of the next item below it, it's very close together. It's kind of cramped in there. So I just add a little bit more padding between each one of the stores. Sometimes in the scenario you could shrink the text, to kind of make it a little bit more compact instead of adding more margin. But in this case, the text is really good size. If you shrunk it anymore, it'd be hard to read, so a little bit more spacing would be good. Diving around in these different sections, this is just top 9 stores. I'm not sure if this is sponsored stores or is this a different way of perceiving the most popular, highest rated stores. So maybe that'll be obvious to some people, but it might be interesting to put a title in here that was a little bit more, indicative of if they're the most popular this week or something like that, so you kind of know what the top 9 really means. But again, I think the way the logos are presented in the tiles is really obvious and clear and clean. Good use of the app bar down below. The search button, that's just very obvious what these things are doing. The next screen's a news page. So yeah, I think this is really good. It will be interesting to see if looks like there's probably a news title and then one line of the news article. It'll be interesting to see if that's a good way for people to read these news articles at a glance, or if maybe they'll want a little bit more content to scroll through in each article. I guess it just depends on what the reading experience is like once you actually tap into each one of these stories, if it takes you to the web or if you have a reading experience in the app. But overall, this is really clean. Just a couple of legibility and spacing issues, but it looks really good. I think perhaps that in some of these cases, the texture background of like the little dots, as you can see this very subtle pattern of dots in the background, that might be making like the text of the subtitle a little harder to read. But I don't, it's so subtle that I don't think it's a bad thing. Next app we're going to look at is called My Mood Tracker. This is really cool. I've always wanted an app like this. You kind of enter this app and you say how you're feeling at any point in the day. And you can associate, it's kind of on a rating scale, it's color-coded, you can see here, and you can associate it with a particular picture or a little label of what you're doing or how you're feeling or something like that. So as you're looking back on it later, you can see how your mood correlated to maybe where you were or what you were doing. And then it has things like stats, so you can see what your happiest days were, your saddest days were. So most of this app is just really strongly in the Windows Phone aesthetic. It's really clean. I don't have a lot of feedback on this app. At first I was going to say the I feel title in the top in the pivot, maybe something that indicates that it's how you're feeling right now, like a label like now or something might be more appropriate. But I don't know, I think I feel works. I think that's a good title. It would be interesting to see how, if this app goes, if it goes international, how the color coding of the moods correlates in different cultures. Like in some, like to me, red means danger, like something went wrong. But in some cultures, red is the color that represents happiness. So it'd be interesting to see how you might even localize it for different cultures, or maybe these colors work, fine globally. I was looking at the graph on the bottom right, and it's just sort of it's a line graph that I think it sort of curve fits all the ups and downs you have. The points would be, the little dots would be the data of where your entry was, and then the line graph is sort of an approximation. It might be neat if that was actually more of a curve. I think the point of putting a line graph over a dot graph like that is just to smooth it out. And I think there are some libraries out there for doing like Bezier curves. Might be kind of cool looking. I was also, one of the promises of this app is, if you look on the top, it says, discover the causes of your ups and downs. And I thought that was really interesting. If that's something that you put in the market, in the store, I don't know that the app, what I'm seeing right now, does that as best as it could. So what I've always wanted in an app like this is something that tells me, maybe on the stats page, hey, most of the days that you said you were having a bad day, you drank a coffee or something like that. So those causes, and maybe you could use keywords in the labels that people write to actually find those correlations between the rating and something that they're actually doing, or maybe the location attached to the picture that they took, so that it's not just sort of like you had a bad day last week, you had a good day, but it's actually helping you to understand trends in your mood. So that might be something neat that would exist on the stats page. But overall, I mean, I think this app's really clean, and yeah, it's really cool looking. The next app we're going to look at is called, I think it's called Dadidu. It sounds funny, I don't know how you say it. This app is, it's going to provide a way to find discounts in your area. So there's different ways of approaching it. This app used the app bar on the bottom of the screen as sort of a global menu, which I think is fine. But you'll notice throughout, as we look through different screens, that like on the profile screen on the far right, on the bottom of that, there's a little save circle button. And you might want to consider making the app bar more tailored to what screen you're looking at. So you don't always see the same 5 icons down there to navigate globally through the app. You might just see a save button down there because that's what's appropriate to that screen. And you could even take some of those things like settings and search and put them in the extended app bar where you open it up and you see more text options. I think that's more in line with how you can utilize the app bar to provide good contextual options, but you don't like the options for settings or your profile. You don't always need that button to be available all the time. Designing these screens is about reducing clutter and just focusing on what the user is doing at that point in time. So, and the other thing to think about with the app bar is, if we're looking at the first screen all the way on the left, we've got things like your shopping cart or shop, but they haven't signed in yet. They need to sign in or sign up. So do they have a cart yet? That button might just be disabled. It probably shouldn't be available yet, I don't think. So just think about the different screens, what app bar buttons would be appropriate to just be front and center. Just another really minor graphical thing is you're probably going to want more space between the app bar icons down on the bottom. I think if you just use the default styles, they're going to end up being spaced further apart, but it's important just to double check that if you do something custom, because you want to make sure that you don't provide an opportunity for mistaps. If the buttons are further apart, the user will have more confidence in hitting it with their finger and not accidentally hitting the wrong button. I wasn't sure in the sign-in page what the little colored squares are. There's a little square next to email and a little square next to password. In other screens in this app, we'll see that exists in a couple of places, and I just wasn't sure what that was. Sometimes it's being used as like a list picker, like a little drop-down menu. I just didn't understand what that was. I might take the labels like email and password and move those out of the boxes themselves, so you just see the the label above each field. I think that'll be clear once you start typing in the field. The label's still there; it doesn't disappear. Other comment about the sign-in, sign-up screen was that it looks like it's in a pivot, so you sign in or you sign up, and you just kind of pan between those two, and you just see the form elements that are appropriate to whatever section you're in. But I'm looking in the sign-in screen right now, and I see a button to sign in and a button to sign up. So that's a little confusing. It's like, oh, there's a sign-up button, but I was going over to the other section to sign up. So again, I would just focus on what are you trying to do on this one section, and then just provide options for that. Oh, also an icon for the sign-in with Facebook might be a good idea. People are accustomed to just recognizing the color and the little F for signing in with Facebook. Looking at the messaging screen in the center, there's it's sort of a conversation going on between you and the store where you're getting, or the person offering the discount. I might try presenting that more like the SMS style text messaging, at least splitting up the blocks by who's authoring the message. So there'd be a block for what you had to say, and then a block for what the Shoe Mania had to say, and then another one for you. I think that'll help to reinforce that this is like a back and forth conversation, instead of just a big block of text that was written by one person. So you can use the style of like the little voice bubble with the little triangle off to the side. If you see a lot of messaging apps on Windows Phone, you'll see that sort of style. But yeah, just kind of splitting it up. Just going to dive into some more screens in this app. So you can see on, this is kind of the shopping cart flow of this app. So you've decided what, you found the discount that you want, and now you're going to commit to it. So in the first screen, you can choose a quantity and a size for, in this case, it's shoes. So I think this kind of works if you only have a handful of options for the quantity and the size, but I think what might be a better choice is just a list picker. So it's kind of like a drop-down menu you see on a website, and you can just see what the current option is, and if you if you tap it, then you see a list of all the quantities or all the sizes that are available. There's also in the Coding for Fun toolkit, there's a numeric picker, I think. So it's a little bit more custom for numbers, and it's kind of like a full screen experience. So for choosing numbers from a list, that might be a neat option. The other thing I was going to say on this screen is, again with the app bar, I would consider taking the Add to Cart icon and just making that the central app bar icon. But in that space where you have the Add to Cart tile, it might be neat to show a photo of the product. It's just kind of, I think, will help the continuity from choosing the discount through to actually checking out. You can see you already have the photo of the shoe over on the checkout page, so it'd be very easy just to carry that through all of the interfaces. I did want to point out that if you're not familiar, if you're wondering what the deal is with the pattern in the background on these pictures, the designers used the Windows Phone grid. So there's a few different transparent PNGs out there that you can use to overlay on your comps, and you can even install them in your applications as they're running, just to help you with alignment and sizing and whatnot. But that's what's going on. When this app launches, they'll hide that grid. Just kind of blueprinting the interface. I was looking at if you look at the central screen, the options continue shopping, checkout, and send message, they're aligned right, and then circle buttons on the right, and I think that works. I was asked last week by a different developer, what do you do when you have a multi-step, like a multi-step flow? And he was saying, I kind of wanted to use a pivot, but then that doesn't make a lot of sense because you can only move on to one step once you've completed the previous step. So, I think this is a good way of representing when you're done with this screen, move on to the next step. So it's a little unconventional to have stuff right aligned, but I think it works. It's kind of pointing you to the right, So especially if you have like a horizontal sliding transition between these pages, I think it can work really well. Hey. Sure. Sorry about that. We've got a handyman doing some work. In the screen, you can browse the categories of shopping, and you can see that some of these icons I think work. Like you can see like furniture is really simple. Some of the other ones I was saying earlier, like if you choose a really high fidelity icon, you'll see like with accessories over on the far right, it's almost like it was hand drawn, and so it gets a little pixelated. It doesn't really fit with the overall theme. You can tell some of these icons that just feel like a silhouette. They feel like a Windows Phone icon, and some of the others that are like black and white, or they look like they came out of a dictionary or something, like an illustration. They just kind of don't really fit. So I would go for consistency on these. So if you see, like, I'm just going to kind of nitpick on the whole bunch of things here. Like if you look at in the center of the screen under beach volley, the ball is actually color. It's the only icon that has color, as far as I can tell. So it just looks out of place. So just going for consistency on all these things. The scenario that I'd be most concerned is the ones where the icon is actually overlapping the text. So you can see with most of the people playing sports, it's overlapping the text a little bit. Now, in a lot of cases, it's obvious what it is. You know, it says basketball. The guy's head is covering up the A. I can still tell he's playing basketball. So, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it could be a little clearer. You know, if you have the option to make text unobscured and legible, try and do that. So yeah, going back to the colors a little bit, in this app I see that there's kind of a beige color and then there's like a darker orange color being used in tiles and different things. And so like me approaching it, having never seen this before, I tried to like figure out what the correlation was. Like, are orange things the ones that I've visited before, or those things the things that I like? I'm not really sure. So I would either, you know, if you're going to use color like this, either make it mean something or just choose a color that you want to use as your main accent color and just use that. When you just kind of alternate it and use it in different places, it can be a little bit confusing for the user. So this is the last set of pictures for this app. Yeah, so on the first screen you can see that's kind of the list picker scenario that I was talking about. It's, you know, you can see you're choosing a category like shoes, accessories, and then you're choosing a brand, and you're choosing whether you want new or used. So, you know, you can use a list picker to just choose from a drop-down, new or used. That could be a toggle or checkbox or something. Those are just some of the controls that are out of the box available for you instead of having to reinvent the wheel with something that people aren't familiar with. And again, I think like if you look at the items page in the center, you know, if you use some of the more traditional controls out there, and then you moved like new item on the bottom, new item, save, and color size, if you actually just used those in the app bar, you know, this whole page could be a lot cleaned up. It's kind of cluttered right now, but I think just kind of like using some of the built-in stuff and reducing some of the clutter on the page would really help. I believe also the color. I think there's a control out there that you can use for that as well. That's very similar to it might be in the Coding for Fun toolkit or something, but I think there's a color picker out there that has a similar feel to like the traditional list pickers. And that's just going to take up less screen space on this one page. On the final screen, I was looking at how you're browsing pictures. It looks like you can see along the bottom what pictures you have, and then you have an option to take a new photo. I think that's just how this works. I was wondering if you could take the, let's say when you go to this screen, what you see right away is a whole gallery of pictures that's taking up the main space on the page. And then down in the app bar right in the middle is a camera icon to take a new photo. I think that would minimize the number of steps that someone has to take. You know, they can choose from a gallery. They immediately see the gallery right there. And then the taking of the photo, that doesn't really get in the way. It just is down in the app bar if they need it. I think that would clean up that page a little bit and reduce the number of steps you have to do to tap through everything. The next app we're going to add is called Blur Wizard. So this app, I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of resources that are useful, because this app developer, it looks like they have an iPhone or some sort of iOS background. Maybe they made this app for the iPhone already. So you're going to see a few screens in a second that have that kind of iOS look to them. And so this is a challenge that developers face if you're porting over, if that's your background. You know, how do you do it within Windows Phone? What's different about, you know, navigating in a Windows Phone app or presenting options and buttons and whatnot? So just going to give you a couple of links here. This is the Windows Phone Design Bootcamp. This is a series of videos that you can watch them in order. You know, this very intro to Windows Phone design. You know, if you're not familiar, if you don't have the background of it. And then it's a good resource. You can jump around and just watch 10 minutes at a time here or there if there's a particular topic that you want to deep dive into. The other resource that I wanted to show you was just in the design section of the Dev Center on Windows Phone site. This is, if you just go to dev.windowsphone.com and you go into design, you go into library, you'll find this page. And this has a lot of good resources, but one of the things I wanted to point out was down on the bottom of this page there is a list of controls. And this is really great because each one of these, like let's say checkbox, I'll click on that. This is going to dive into this documentation. And for designers, it's going to give you a little bit of an image of what the different states of that checkbox like. So this is the MSDN documentation can be kind of intimidating sometimes. You can see over here on the left how much content there is in here. But the designer site is a good way to just jump you in to just good examples and good guidelines on how to use each one of these. So here's the design library. This stuff's really easy to find if you just Bing it. So so as we dive into, I've thrown all of the screens that's developer sent on one page here so we can look at all of them. So you can see clearly it's got a iOS influence on these interfaces. And you can see if you compare some of these screens to Windows Phone apps how they can be a lot more cluttered. And not just in that there's a lot of form elements in Chrome on the page, but that you've got elements like on the top, like the back button. Well, there's a back button in the hardware on Windows phones, and if you use the navigation stack when you're developing the app, you can just use that back button. So that's an example of something that you just don't even really need on the screen. Other things to just think about are like, let's look at the second screen right here. There's a list of items, but and each one of these items has a name, and it has a weight, and it has a how you want to oil the ball. So this whole app is going to help you to become a better bowler by keeping track of your games and what balls you're using. So if you look at that list of your bowling balls, there's nothing that really jumps out at you. Everything in the list is the same size. The name and the weight and the oil is all the same size. So it's just kind of a lot of reading. There's nothing that really jumps out at you. If you're looking for a specific item, you kind of have to do a lot of reading. So these are just some examples. I hope through like watching these webinars and reading some of that documentation and stuff, you'll kind of pick up how you can maybe take better advantage of the app bar along the bottom and move some of these buttons like saving or just saying you're done. You can move some of those things into the app bar on the bottom. There's a lot that you could really do here. In addition to just kind of using some of the built-in styles, like the text inputs, the way that they look on the Windows Phone. If you go with a completely different aesthetic like this, if you were to try to make this, it would be a lot of work for you to come up with a whole different theming. And there really wouldn't be a lot of advantage to it, to making it just look like an iPhone app on the Windows Phone. It would just kind of be confusing for people. So I just kind of try and follow the style. So if you look at this second screen, I was talking about how there wasn't a lot of, there's just not a lot of style to it. There's not a lot of design to it. How could you do it on Windows Phone where it would have some? So here's an example, just kind of like a before and after. So you can see that the image on the right is a comp that I put together. It has all the same information as your page on the left, but here I have the option to make the name of each item larger, and then make the information about it a little bit smaller and dimmer. I can include an image. We have enough screen real estate here, and we know that users scroll and pan and slide through interfaces really easily. So there's not a whole lot of reason to cram a whole lot on the screen. We can make it really beautiful and easy to read as the main focus. Easy to spot, a ball that you're looking for or something like that. and then make the options that are really relevant to the screen, like adding a new one, just make that the central item in the app bar down below. So if you're not familiar with this, like the app bar it can have extended options. So there's a few different ways to present it. One is collapsed, where it's a very thin bar with just the 3 dots, and it just sort of indicates that there are options in there. Most of the time you're going to see what you see here, which is these circle buttons. The 3 dots, though, can indicate that there's more, and you can actually put text options below in this bar, so when you can kind of open it up, and there are more options down in just text, like a text list underneath your circle buttons. That's where a good thing like settings and edit my profile and kind of like global app-wide navigation can go. So yeah, I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of a direction of the way that you could design stuff with this app. There's, because there's so much that differs from the typical Windows Phone app right now, I haven't gone into detail on every single page. But I hope that you can glean enough to kind of revamp it, and you can always, take a stab at some of these pages like this, and then resubmit, and I'll take another look at it, and we can talk more about specifics. So yeah, that is all for today. The next session is going to be on February 21st, and if you make any submissions before next Tuesday, I'll review them for next week. Thank you for attending.